and welcome to the Doofcast, the official variety podcast of doofmedia.com. My name is Scott Daly, and watch out, folks. I'm getting reports of flying piranha puppets in the area.
Careful, they're rubbery. And I'm Matt Freeman, podcasting from inside a sunken shipwreck.
What are you doing down there?
Oh, you know what people do when they're scuba diving in shipwrecks.
Bang.
Getting busy.
This week on the show, we're finally beginning our newest Deconstructing Director series. This time around, we'll be taking a look at a director you've probably never heard of, one James Cameron. This week, Cameron's first film, something you actually probably have never heard of, Piranha II, The Spawning. Then we're going to be taking a look at the results of last week's vote on Groundhog Day, whether or not it got into our canon of greatest films of all time. So look forward to that. I'm sure it's a very suspenseful and shocking result of that vote. I haven't even looked at it yet, Matt. It's going to be game time decision. I don't even know.
All right. This is going to be fun. I have no idea.
But let's go ahead and just jump right into Piranha 2, The Spawning, Matt. But before we do that, let's talk about Mr. Jim Cameron a little bit here.
Okay.
I actually was surprised to know that I didn't know that much about James Cameron as a human, not a director of a movie I really like.
Right. I think that I know a lot of trivia about James Cameron that basically amounts to, in my mind, James Cameron is a protagonist. in the sense that like wild and crazy shit is always happening to him. And his life is just this like series of impossible successes upon successes. And then he just like retired to be even more of a protagonist, I guess, in his retirement.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy when you look at it. I mean, he was born James Francis Cameron in 1954 in Ontario. He moved to California with his family when he was a teenager. He dropped out of college. He went to college to study physics. That lasted half a semester. Then he switched to English. That lasted the second half of the semester. And then he dropped out and just kind of, like bummed around doing odd jobs until 1977, where he goes into the movies and sees Star Wars and just goes, that's what I want to do. And then he just kind of did it. He just said, I want to make movies. And then he did. Like, here, this is a true story, Matt.
Uh-huh.
He got together with a friend and borrowed money from a, quote, consortium of dentists. What?
I don't know what. That's just a story unto itself.
And just he somehow convinced this consortium of dentists to give him and his friend money. He used that money to learn how to direct, write, and produce a short film, having no experience in doing any of that before in his life. It's a film called Xenogenesis. I've never seen it. I don't even think it's available to be seen anywhere. But that was like 1977. And he's directing the film we're talking about today a year later. A year later, he's directing a feature film. And yes, it's not like the biggest feature film of all time, but like, what story is that?
Yeah.
You walk into a movie theater in 1977 and go, movies, that's good. I think I'm going to do that. And then a year later, you just are.
Yeah. I think that perhaps out of all of the directors we've covered, Cameron is the one who most strikes me as like the CEO archetype, where he just executes.
Mm-hmm.
Like he doesn't think about things. He's just like, okay, how do we make this happen? And he just like crushes through all the obstacles. And if that involves putting people in a freezing cold giant tank of water until they get hypothermia, then so be it.
Which he's done on multiple occasions.
Yeah, like we'll get to eventually.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely true. He has directed 8 feature films that we'll be covering over the course of this series, and 2 documentaries, which I'm kind of going back and forth on those, Matt. I think it might be worth it to cover one of those documentaries because I think that's such a key part of who James Cameron is and what the latter half of his career has been, that maybe covering one of them is a good idea.
I mean, I want to watch them because I haven't watched them. So
Sure.
It'll be good to just have that excuse to watch them. So.
Yeah, that's fair. But his feature films have won a total of 21 Academy Awards. In fact, there's only one Jim Cameron film besides this one we're talking about today that has not won at least one Oscar. Can you guess which movie that is? Can you guess?
Is it the one we're talking about today?
No, besides the one we're talking about today.
Oh. Hold on.
You can do it.
Avatar.
No, Avatar won like 5 Oscars.
I was. Okay, hold on. Terminator 1.
Oh my God, it's True Lies, Matt. True Lies
okay.
won 0 Oscars.
See, the funny thing about Cameron is I literally forget movies that he's directed because I like True Lies and Aliens are such different creatures, you know?
Yeah. So his movies tend to be these huge kind of special effect spectacles. James Cameron is the son of an engineer, and I think he kind of inherited from his father this idea of wanting to figure out how things work, and as you said, kind of solve problems. His movies have been huge in advancing technological filming achievements, both not outside of filming too. Like all his water movies have advanced deep sea exploration by years, just in solving the problem of, hey, how do we film this? So he invented technology, or at least was part of inventing technology. Same with Avatar, where he invented technology to figure out how to film that movie. He loves doing that stuff. He's involved in every aspect of production on all his movies. He is a writer director. Every single one of these movies has a writing credit on them. He started in special effects. That's something we didn't talk about, that before he got this movie, he was a special effects director. So like that's really, I think, where he lies the most. And he if you talk to actors that have worked for James Cameron, they they have a lot of things to say about him, and they're not necessarily the nicest things in the world. He wants to do everything on set, and he wants to be in everything on set, and that can feel micromanagey for sure. And he knows what he wants, and he wants to get it. And as you said, he doesn't really care about your opinion on it, and that can be a difficult person to work with. I think Kate Winslet famously said she would never work for him again, unless it was a lot of money. She's going to be in Avatar too, so
that's hilarious. That I'll just comment there. I feel at this point like he's good at getting really good performances out of his actors, but not great performances out of his actors. You know what I mean?
I do. I mean, I think like he's worked with some really talented actors, but I don't like looking over this list of movies. I'm not like, oh yeah, this was the one that I remember because of this iconic performance by this actor or actress. Like these movies are good and I like them all, but it's not like he's not an actor's director for sure. He doesn't find a way to bring out like I mean, I wonder, we talked about all of these movies. He's won 21 Academy Awards. I don't think any of them have been actor or actress awards. They're almost always the technical awards, right? He wins for special effects. He wins for sound, and he wins for directing, and he wins for editing. He wins for the technical side of movie making. He doesn't. I'm looking and I don't see an acting.
Well, I would just guess that aside from Titanic, none of them have even the sort of emotional role that would win an Academy Award,
Yeah. Which is not to say there's not emotionality in these movies. There certainly is.
Yeah. The last comment on acting from me for now, anyway, is just he is the only director who can get a legitimately good performance out of Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I mean, I don't think you're wrong. I mean,
Schwarzenegger, he's iconic as the Terminator, but then you say, but the Terminator is a role where he just acts like a robot. That's nothing. And it's like, first of all, I disagree. But setting that aside, Schwarzenegger's performance in True Lies is like his funniest performance.
Yeah,
definitely. So he understands what he has with Arnold.
I'm looking forward to revisiting True Lies. It's a movie I haven't watched in a very long time. I actually was kind of, perusing the internet today, and I realized that True Lies is a movie that is not available regularly. It's not streaming anywhere. We're going to have to do some work to find copies of that movie, which seems ridiculous. Like, It was a big movie. It's Arnold Schwarzenegger. What's going on?
Yeah, I know I used to own it. I don't know if I still do, but I guess I'll figure that out.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I guess we're at the beginning here. What are you most excited about, like learning about James Cameron throughout this process? I think out of all the directors we've covered on the series, this is the one that you and I both know the most, at least from, his films specifically. Like we've every single one of the movies, with the exception of the one we're talking about today, are movies I've seen many, many, many times. So I think there is room to learn stuff here, but it is going to be slightly different than the other directors we've covered.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what comes to my mind now is the big moments that he's able to build to. Just I think this is why I love him so much, is he's able to build to these amazing action crescendos. I could start naming the scenes, but I mean, we're going to get there eventually, so I'll just wait. But just better understanding how he sets those up and how he delivers them. I think there's probably other stuff that I'm going to discover as we go through this project that I should be paying attention to, but I'm not right now. But that's where I'm thinking about right now, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the commonalities between his movies are so like broad. Like you look him up on Wikipedia, and like you look at, I think there's a section for common themes, and it's just the very standard typical stuff. It's like he likes movies in which it is corporations versus nature, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I guess like there are a lot of evil corporations in Jim Cameron movies. It's like he likes movies with strong female characters, and I'm like, yeah, okay. I guess that's true. Like, I think there's a lot more to it than that, and I really want to be able to dive into the depths of like, you know, what is the thing that makes a James Cameron movie besides these buzzword things that we can throw on a list, you know?
Yeah. Right. I mean, so that's a great point, because there were things that I noticed. I was watching The Abyss the other day because I just hadn't seen it in a while. I was trying to show it to my kids because it's relatively tame, actually, all things considered. And I realized while watching it, like, James Cameron loves filming cool machines. Like, that, so much of that movie is just like, here's this cool underwater station, and here's this cool like giant boat with this giant crane on it, and here's these helicopters coming into land. Almost reminds me of Michael Bay at some points, where it's like just the loving shots of cool machines, and like giving you a sense of like the scope and kind of awesome power of these machines. And then you can look at all of his other movies. We've got like loving shots of Harrier jets flying around, and Space Marine dropships going toward the planet, and Avatar is basically, that's just what Avatar is. But that's not what James Cameron is, right? That would be extremely reductive to be like, oh, James Cameron, the guy who does shots of machines. It's like, no, this is just one thing that he likes, and he understands that people like to look at cool machines, and then he gives us that, and we're like, neat, thank you, that's fun. So anyway, like that's the thing, is it's I do think there's something deeper there. Like, if I really did think that James Cameron was just kind of a functional action director, I wouldn't have been interested in doing a deconstructing series. I think there's definitely something deeper than that with him.
Yeah, and I really want to get to that, because I mean, like, Aliens would be on a list of one of my favorite films of all time. I mean, both Avatar and Titanic are two of the three highest grossing films of all time. Like, so there is something unique and specific to him beyond just functionally well done stories and technically impressive filmmaking. Like, it takes something else, some right now ineffable quality that elevates what he's doing. And I think a lot of my goal during the series is to F it.
That's right. That's I'd say that's the goal of deconstructing directors, is to just F all these directors.
Yes. I just wasn't expecting you to go there. I thought I knew where you were going, and I thought you were saying a serious statement, and then nope.
Never.
Let's F him. All right, so let's F James Cameron.
All right.
And we're going to begin here with his first film. To put it in context, once again, this is a movie that he made less than 2 years after he just randomly decided that he was going to be a filmmaker. And there's a lot to the story of James Cameron's involvement of this movie. But before we get to that, Matt, you got to let everyone know, what is Piranha II: The Spawning all about?
Sleek, fierce, savage, deadly. The Piranha. For centuries nature's most ferocious killer. Until now. The new breed is here. Faster, more ferocious, and infinitely more deadly. Piranha 2.
It's tremendous jaw pressure. It's sure to clean me through bone in places.
It's here. It's alive. And it's multiplying.
A scuba diving instructor, her biochemist boyfriend, and her police chief ex-husband try to link a series of bizarre deaths to a mutant strain of piranha fish whose lair is a sunken freighter ship off a Caribbean island result.
A lot of spoilers going on in there.
Yeah.
The biochemist boyfriend's supposed to be a mid film reveal.
Yeah. And also, I don't think he's her ex-husband. I think he's just her husband that she's just not with anymore. So
yeah.
Pretty sloppy.
Yeah. This movie was written by Charles Egley, Ovidio G. Asanitis, and James Cameron, and directed by Mr. James Cameron. It stars Trisha O'Neill, Stephen Marachuk, and hey, it's Lance Henriksen's in this movie.
What a delightful surprise.
I had no idea.
Me neither.
So, okay. The original Piranha is a Joe Dante film. I don't know if you know who Joe Dante is.
I don't.
Joe Dante, you probably know him from, I'm trying to think of what you would know. Oh, you probably know him from Gremlins. If you've seen Gremlins, you know who Joe Dante is, and Gremlins too.
Okay.
And so the original Piranha film, because it's a Joe Dante film, it was a movie that came out in 1970. I think I messed up the timeline here. Piranha 2 was 1981. Piranha was 1978. So I lied about how quickly James Cameron got onto a movie set.
Okay.
Sorry. I correct myself there. It took him 3 whole years before he was directing his own movie.
Okay.
But the point is, the original Piranha came out in 78, and that was very clearly a movie made because Jaws was the biggest thing in the world, right? It is very much a Jaws ripoff, except they're piranhas. But it's a movie directed by Joe Dante, so it's a little bit campy. It has a little bit of fun with the inherent ridiculousness of the Premise, which is tiny fish very slowly swarm people and eat them, which doesn't work quite as well as a shark just coming and taking a big bite out of you. And this movie is not that. It's not campy. And one of the questions I want to ask you going into this is, can James Cameron do camp? Because I don't know if he can.
I mean, okay, this movie is funny in places, successfully.
Sure.
But I wouldn't call it campy.
Yeah.
It's a specific kind of comedy where it is making fun of the characters and how kind of ridiculous they are. And I mean, I definitely chuckled a few times, but it's not when you say Gremlins, I'm like, no, the tone is completely different. Not even in the same universe as Gremlins.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the interesting thing about this movie. We have to talk about James Cameron's involvement in this movie because he was originally hired as the special effects director, not the director, but the special effects director. Was suddenly promoted to director after they fired the original guy. The story behind this movie, I spent a lot of time today researching this because it's kind of a confusing story. But the story behind this movie is the producer, which is also one of the guys who wrote it, which is a filmmaker named Ovidio G. Asanitis. I cannot say his name right. He's an Italian director. He wanted to make this movie. He went to like a Warner Brothers like offshoot studio. They promised him $500,000 to make this movie. That's right. This movie only cost $500,000, Matt.
Okay.
But their one stipulation was you need to have an American director name up there, which is like in 2021. That's like kind of a weird stipulation because I think it's not like seeing an Italian person's name directed by is not going to keep people out of seats in 2021,
right,
you know,
right.
But it was a different time. The early 80s were definitely a different time.
Yeah,
so
that's interesting. And it's not like James Cameron's name was known either. So
right. So it's not like put James Cameron on it. It's like, no, we just needed a name that sounds American to put in there. So they originally hired this guy. He wasn't working out and he left the project. And so Jim Cameron found himself promoted. But what the producer, Asanitis wanted here was a person he could push out of the way and do everything himself. Like he wanted a brand new director, someone who had never directed before, so he could very easily take control of the movie and just put him on there in name only. Unfortunately, he made the mistake of hiring James Cameron to do that, and that is just not the type of person James Cameron is. The story goes, he went down to this movie was filmed in Jamaica. He went down there a week before shooting, saw that they had not location scouted at all. They had no permits to film anywhere. The script was a mess. Everything was messed up. And he took control. He rewrote the movie. He grabbed a camera and a local with a car and drove around the island, location scouting, like doing very informal agreements with places to allow them to film there. He basically took control. And then he directed like 4 days worth of scenes, and he was butting heads with the producer the whole time, and then he got fired. And so this is not a James Cameron movie.
Right.
Is the lesson at the end of the day here. His name is on it because contractually they had to have the name of an American filmmaker on the movie, but he wasn't in control of the edit. He didn't film most of the scenes. It's not really his movie, right. and yet it is his movie.
It's funny. So I guess both of us were noticing as we were watching specific scenes where we're like, oh, this is definitely a scene that he either filmed or wrote.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's specific dialogue scenes during the beginning, which are really just functional character introduction scenes. And I was just like, James Cameron wrote that. That there's a scene later in the movie that is so much like the scene where in Aliens when the company is sort of grilling Ripley over what she saw at the on the ship. I was like, this must be the inspiration for that scene, because it hits all the same beats of like the corporate tools not listening to the powerful woman who knows what's going on, and her not brooking their bullshit, and
Trisha O'Neill kind of has the same hair that Ripley had in that scene.
Yeah.
So, which makes it even closer. Yeah, I totally agree.
She's definitely supposed to be a Ripley character. I guess one thing that we have to say about this movie is it's one of those sex movies. What's the word for it? Where there's like everybody's naked all the time, and that's like the point of the movie. Like
I believe they call those 80s movies.
Yeah,
is I think the technical term for them.
It's even more so than usual, though.
No, I mean, this is like what they were going for here is a raunchy, horny, slasher monster film in which everyone's naked all the time. Like there's multiple scenes with two very young women who are on their own boat, who are just topless constantly, only for the camera's benefit. Neither of them are getting anything out of it. It's everyone's naked all the time. It's definitely one of those movies for sure.
I mean, the first scene of the movie, we have to talk about the first scene of the movie because it's actually a perfect metaphor for James Cameron's entire career. Okay. So there's this shot of like a small boat. It's dark. It's nighttime. The boat is floating out in the ocean, and you hear voiceover. And you presume it's the two people who were on the boat. And it's a man and a woman. They're going back and forth, and it sounds from the context like the woman is criticizing the man for not having the energy to have sex.
Yes,
and he's being whiny, and she's being insistent, and he's like, oh, I just had such a hard day, and she's like, but I promise it'll be good. And then and then when it cuts to what's happening in the boat, you see there's a dive mask. You begin to put things together, and then before you know it, they're putting on their dive gear and they're going for a night dive on a shipwreck, which is what they're actually talking about.
But it's a double subversion of your expectations.
It is.
He turns back on it.
He then turns back on it because they go down in the ship underwater, and then they start taking out their regulators and just kind of dropping their like dive tank and regulator somewhere and taking off their masks, just letting them go somewhere and getting naked and making out. And I can assure you, as a scuba diver, that every part of this wouldn't work at all.
I can assure you, as a man who has indeed had sex before, this doesn't sound like it would be good to me.
I mean, At most, it's the kind of thing you would do just to say you did it, but I literally don't think it's possible.
Yeah, there's nothing. There's nothing that would be pleasurable about that. I mean, the weirdest fucking part of the scene is like he's in his underwear, or I guess his bathing suit. He's wearing like a bikini bathing suit, and she pulls out the biggest fucking knife of all time to cut his suit off.
Right.
And like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah. And now his swimsuit is gone. He's not going to get that back.
Well, it's okay because he's going to get eaten by piranha. So I mean, not a big deal.
Right. But the point, like holding your breath for the duration of intercourse, because as I said, they just dropped their tanks. I don't know where they went.
Why
it's dark.
It's such a fucking terrible idea. But I mean, I think that's this movie in a nutshell. I think one thing we have to say about this movie before we go on is it's a bad movie. This is not a good movie. Like James Cameron or not, this is not a good movie. It doesn't work on so many levels. I do think the interesting thing about it for me, and I think this is so Jim Cameron, is it's really 40 minutes into this 90-minute movie before the piranhas show up. I mean, with the exception of the opening scene, the movie spends a long time slowly letting you get to know every single one of these characters, to the point where actually we get to know characters that we actually don't need to know, like the nerdy doctor and the woman on vacation who have their whole love affair that like I really thought was going to go somewhere in the movie, but there's just like one scene of them watching the piranhas kill everyone and then go, oh, it looks bad out there, and then they just walk out of the movie at the end. Right.
Yeah, there's definitely a few that are like that, where it's like we're I guess we're supposed to be giving like texture to the island, which I'm not against that as a way of doing storytelling, but they spend a surprising amount of time with these side characters.
And I think one like jumping ahead a few movies to Aliens, I think one of the most effective things that movie does is like introduce us to every single one of these characters in the Space Marines in like a short amount of time, but still, I mean, it's all, like if you look at the running time, a lot of that movie is devoted to the before they get to the planet section of the film, and getting to know who these characters are. And I think it's like the same kind of desire. Like you can kind of see Jim Cameron like thinks it's really important to make sure we understand who each and every one of these people are before the bad stuff starts happening. Like you can see the same note of desire in that. It's definitely not as clean in this movie. It's kind of messy, and like I just also don't think too many of these characters are very interesting. And so it just doesn't work.
Right. Like I think just story wise, there's Lance Henriksen and the what's her title? The
scuba instructor.
The scuba instructor, the main character, and then their son, right? And their son is like sort of a major character, but like nothing he does matters except that at the end Lance Henriksen goes and finds him in the helicopter, and it's just so like first drafty, I guess, where it's like, you got to do, what are we going to do with this kid?
Yeah, you're right that it felt like there was like three too many people, because there's also the guy named Tyler who is the biologist who's there because he's like trying to see if maybe they lost 4 tanks of piranha eggs and they found 3, and so he's there, I guess, trying to find the 4th, I guess is what he's doing there. I don't know. But then he's there, and so he has the kind of the love affair with the wife, with Anne, I think her name is. And yeah, then you have the son who's with the rich old man and her daughter, and so like it's just like there's a lot of things moving around this thing, and it's like you needed to shrink it down to like focus more, like make Lance Henriksen the protagonist if you want him to be the protagonist, make Trisha O'Neill's Anne character the protagonist if you want her to be the protagonist. Like it keeps cutting back between these other things, and we lose focus on those characters.
Yeah, right. And nobody has an arc as far as I can tell.
No.
I mean, you could maybe make a case for a few people here and there, but I don't. It's not that kind of movie, I guess, is what you could say.
No, it's not. I mean, it's supposed to be a dumb monster movie in which the piranhas come, people try to warn other people and nobody listens, of course, because the one thing is true about these kind of monster movies, that the authority figures are always incompetent, always completely unable or unwilling to do anything to stop the bad things from happening. And so that all happens, and then we defeat the bad things and save the day.
It is kind of hilarious though to say that, you know, this is basically a movie that was sort of made to be like Jaws, when Jaws has like the best character oriented storytelling ever.
It does. I mean, it's a movie that is made to copy Jaws, but that doesn't understand why people actually liked Jaws.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's like it hits all the same beats. Like, instead of the mayor of the town, you have the owner of the hotel who refuses to shut things down.
Mm-hmm.
I like the part that you pointed out that I thought was really interesting was the whole kind of setup of this movie is there's one day a year where all these fish like jump onto the beach to spawn, right? That's where the titular spawning comes from. And so they all jump onto the beach to spawn. And it's become a tradition around this hotel resort that at that time, people come and swoop in and bash all the spawning fish over the head and then cook them and eat them. And of course, the movie starts with two human beings going into the realm of the piranha to spawn, and they get eaten by the piranha, which is, you pointed that out, and it's perfect. But I mean, like, the movie doesn't even seem to realize that that's clever, because it doesn't, like, the spawning itself, it doesn't actually happen in the movie. Like, the piranha are not flying up onto the beach at the exact time that the other fish are supposed to spawn. They're not doing that. They're just there to eat people.
Right. There's some almost there. There's like, you almost had it, you know, and it's funny and it's clever, but like I only thought of that like after finishing the movie, and, you know, knowing I was going to have to talk about it. So it's definitely not an obvious thing.
It's like one of those things where maybe someone like said in a meeting, it was like, oh yeah, that's clever. And they're like, yeah. And then they just didn't do anything to lean into it anymore.
Yeah. It is the sort of thing where I could even see this as a potential, like, very early James Cameron thought. I don't know if he necessarily was the one who came up with this, but, you know, it kind of reminds me of how he likes to have parallels. Like, Aliens is about, you know, two mothers who are trying to protect their offspring, basically.
Yeah.
But in a very, you know, science fiction way. And
yeah, I can't believe I'm about to say the sentence, but there's no attempt to personify the piranha.
Yeah.
I mean, like, there is an interesting thing to be said about, hey, these are just animals that are just in their territory and like they don't know what the hell's going on, and there are people there now. And I mean, like, you didn't need to personify Jaws either, but no, that's not even true, because Jaws is personified. Like, not in a sympathetic way, but like, you by the end of that movie, you feel like he was hunting them. You feel like he had it out for these guys, and they were playing this tug of war against each other. The piranha are just always just kind of there. Like, they're just like, there's not even like a head piranha.
Yeah.
which I mean, speaking of the ending of the movie, they blow up, I don't know, they're like home, which is the derelict ship. But like, that doesn't mean all the piranha are gone. Like, piranha aren't like, there's not like a queen piranha that's the only way they can reproduce. Like, if there were two fish not in that ship, they're just gonna make more piranha.
The movie should have ended with them all hugging, and then out of Lance Henriksen's pants drops the queen piranha, and then it cuts him in half.
Yeah. And then we go, oh, that's where that scene in Aliens.
And then we get the final act of the film, actually, for real.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. Yeah, you're right. It doesn't make sense. It's stupid. It's a bad movie.
It's all really stupid. Like, I'm almost glad we don't have to blame Jim Cameron for so much of this, because like, I mean, here's, like, we talked about which parts are James Cameron and which parts aren't. This movie has a lot of underwater diving sequences, like a lot. The first movie did not. All the underwater shit in the first movie was like really cloudy and terrible. You couldn't tell what was going on. and they really didn't do anything underwater because they just couldn't afford it. And so it's mostly just people above the surface of the water while they play that same piranha noise. The noise that they used in this movie is the same noise they used in the other movie. And they just play that noise over and over again and have people scream, and then like cut to quick shots of like piranha, like just the piranha puppets like bumping up against the skin and then blood coming out, which is kind of the same thing they do in this movie. But they didn't do any of the underwater stuff. And I really feel like it's just so very James Cameron to be like, no, we gotta go underwater. We gotta scuba dive and we gotta explore like a derelict ship. Fuck yeah. Let's do that. Let's do that shit. Because I mean, like neither you and I had ever seen this movie, and it opens up with them exploring a ship under, like it opens up basically like the Titanic. And we're just like, okay, here we are. We're in a James Cameron series now. Here we are. And I think, for the most part, the under the water stuff is relatively well filmed. I will say the climactic sequence is lit very badly. Mm-hmm. And I think this is just a budget thing. I found it very difficult to tell what the fuck was going on in that final sequence. So they're like, they set the bomb in the thing and they're trying to escape, and the piranha comes. So they like hide in the vents of the underwater ship. And it's trying to be tense, like it's trying to be them crawling through the vents and the piranha are chewing the vents to break through. And it's like it just doesn't work because I don't know. Is this just me? Like the lighting I thought was very poor in those sequences.
Well, yeah, the lighting was bad. I was routinely confused by the geography whenever they went down into the ship. Like what direction are we going and stuff?
Yeah, like how close are they to getting out of the ship was a thing I wasn't clear about.
Yeah, like that's the thing is I don't think it was like remarkable. Like I wasn't watching the underwater scenes and thinking like, oh wow, this guy is definitely going to go on to become the most successful director of all time. It was just like, yeah, I mean, it's it's obviously really hard to do. Like he probably like as an experience, I wonder if he didn't walk away from it like knowing he hadn't done super great and being like, damn it, I have to go back. I have to go back and do underwater filmmaking correctly because I had to deal with all these technical challenges. And what if I invented some kind of special rig that I could use to do, like he was probably sitting there with his like ridiculously impressive sketching skills, sketching like designs for, new underwater cameras that he could use and, thinking about the plot of Abyss or whatever. I don't know. Like you have to assume a guy who goes on to kind of have the career that this guy has, the fact that this was his first movie and his first job was underwater filmmaking was formative and important for him.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, like to chicken and egg that, right? Because it was like, because he has a writing credit on, like, did he decide himself that I love underwater shit, I'm going to make the home of the piranha be a wrecked ship under the water? Or was it that way before and he fell in love with that kind of filmmaking? I don't know the answer to that. I would guess the former. Like I just see it. I think James Cameron's love with exploring the depths of the ocean is a thing that's been with him his entire life. And he's just like used movie making to explore that love. Mm-hmm. So I really feel like he saw an opportunity here to bring that love into this movie and just said, yep, we're going to do it. And it's so wild because it's such a James Cameron choice. Like, I don't know if it is or not, but like a $500,000 budget movie where your new director / writer comes in and says, yes, what this movie needs is an extremely expensive underwater shoot that's going to be 10 minutes of screen time. Oh, by the way, there's going to be no dialogue for any of those 10 minutes because none of our characters can communicate with each other underwater. So not only is it going to be super expensive to film, it's also going to be very expensive to convey or very difficult to convey anything. You can't convey emotion because we can't see the people's faces. You can't convey information through dialogue. We just gotta have to use score, and we're gonna have to use them waving their arms and swimming very fastly. And it's such a hard decision to make. It's like making the movie the most difficult possible movie you could make, and that feels like James Cameron to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. I think this is a research question actually for us, is find out when and how Cameron got interested in undersea exploration and scuba diving and all of that.
So there's a book that was written about James Cameron that I think I'm going to read over the course of this show. It's called Dreaming Aloud: The Films of James Cameron. It's a book by Christopher Hurd. It came out in 1998, so I think it has only up through Titanic, but it's kind of like his early life through Titanic. And I think I'm going to read this. I don't usually like to do too much background information, but I'm really interested. It does talk about his early life and his first few jobs. I think he was a special effects director on Escape from New York before this movie. This is his first director role, but he was working in the industry for I guess 3 years before this, getting to do opportunities, probably just walking onto a set and saying, yeah, I can do special effects, sure. And I'll figure it out. And he just did, because that's what James Cameron does. He just figures it out. So I think I'm going to read that book, and I think maybe we'll circle back as we go through the movies and figure out who this guy is. But I feel like, okay, so I have the Wikipedia entry open here, which I know is not the most conclusive, but it does say his high school classmates said he was super interested in the depths. So I don't that's one of those things that like you say after he gets really into deep sea diving, that someone you interview a high school and he's like, oh yeah, he was like really into water always. Yeah. He just loved water.
Yeah. Because to me, it's like, I want to know, okay, but when did he first go scuba diving? Was it, in the course of making Piranhas do the spawning, or was it like had his family gone scuba diving when he was young and he fell in love with it? Because like I haven't scuba dived, I guess that's the word, in
scuba dove
diving in many years, but it was very impactful on me. Like it's sort of a magical thing where like once you do it, you kind of want to be an evangelist for it and be like, hey, did you know that you know how we think like alien planets are cool? Did you know that there's one of those? You just have to go under the water with the mask on, and it is basically an alien world where everything has different rules and looks totally weird and different and magical, and you can fly around it at will. Like I can see that becoming super inspiring to a young man and kind of hijacking the course of his life. And I wonder if that's what happened.
That's very possible. I've actually never been scuba diving. I don't know if you knew that. Never gone.
Most people haven't. But like it's incredibly awesome. I mean, I don't talk about it more because it's like okay, Matt, like when am I going to do that? And like it's a huge amount of like overhead to actually get to the point of doing it. You have to take classes and stuff. So, but yeah, no, it's awesome, super super awesome.
Yeah, not if you go to a foreign country though. They let you do it without.
That's true.
Without license. I know this because I've seen it in plenty of horror films where people uneducated in scuba diving are just allowed to go scuba diving, and then bad stuff happens.
Yeah, and I mean, in real life, the common bad thing that happens is that you just die of not understanding how to use your tank, and it's just tragic in a very boring way. Instead of you get kidnapped by people or whatever.
What? Who's getting kidnapped?
I assume that's the plot of whatever movie you were talking about. I don't know.
I was actually talking about a shark movie. So
shark movie. Okay.
I mean, I guess technically you could say being eaten by a shark is being kidnapped.
That's true. I mean, it strikes me. See, okay, here's the fun thing about diving in foreign countries, though, is you what you always do is you just get on the boat of some guy you just met, and the guide takes you and whoever you're with out into the wide open sea. Maybe you can see land, maybe not. And then he's like, all right, here's the spot. And if he wanted to, he could instead of saying, here's the spot, he could say, all right, you're my captive now. And there's nothing you could do about it because you're in a foreign country far away from the shore with probably either no phone or a phone that won't work. So it's always a very nerve-wracking experience, but that's part of what makes it awesome, I think.
Yeah. Okay. I doubt James Cameron ever has had that problem.
I don't know. There are kidnappings in his story.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that. James Cameron is apparently very close friends with another one of our deconstructing directors, Guillermo del Toro, whose father was kidnapped in Guadalajara in 1998. And apparently James Cameron gave Del Toro $1 million in cash to help pay for his father's ransom. What? Is this life? Is this real life?
Yeah.
That happens?
Like I said, James Cameron is a protagonist. He's not a man. He's one of the players of this game.
Yeah, I mean, it is pretty disheartening to find out that we are just side characters in the story that is James Cameron's life.
But at least we get to enjoy the fruits of his labor.
That's true. Okay, what else do you want to say about Piranha 2? Man, okay, so let's talk about the Piranha themselves, because James Cameron is a special effects guy. They don't look very good, Jim.
No.
They don't. First of all, like, I think whether or not this is biologically accurate, the image you have in your head of what a piranha looks like is actually very distinct. You know, there are other kinds of fish and there are piranha. And piranha, like, you can close your eyes and imagine what a piranha looks like, and it looks different. It looks piranha-ish, right?
Yes.
These fish don't look like that at all. They do not have any distinctive piranha features to them.
You are
They
correct.
just look like bass with wings on them.
Well, okay. I mean, you're right, but also more fundamentally, perhaps, is you never get a good look at them. And I wanted to bring this up when you were talking about the fact that piranha is just kind of a crappy monster, because like they don't personify the piranha. They don't feel like anything. They don't feel scary. They're just a dark kind of shape, and a dark shape can be scary for a while, but eventually you want to get a good look at the thing. Like even a really, really crappy B movie knows that at a certain point in the movie you have to reveal what the thing looks like, and we just really never get. It's always this flurry, busy, rapid, kind of out of focus, really dark. Just just shaking the puppets and hitting people on the throat with the puppet. And, yeah.
Well, I mean, it kind of has to be. I mean, this is what happens when you create a story idea working backwards. Like when we want to make a Jaws movie, but we can't do a shark. That's been done already. Okay, what do we do? Well, piranha are scary, and I think they are. Like, I think doing a piranha movie is not an inherently bad idea, but the scary thing about piranha are the swarm of them, right? This idea of this fish swarms you. And it's not the being scared of one fish, but being scared of 100 fish all biting you simultaneously. And they just can't do that. They just there's not an effective way to do that. And this movie in particular, like, tries to make the individual fish scary. Like the one somehow living inside the body of the dead person in the morgue that jumps out and kills the cleaning woman. And I'm just like, I don't know, man. Like, I feel like if I got attacked by one piranha, I could probably take it. Like, I think I could take one piranha.
I feel like I could just, even if it killed me and like rip my throat. No, it's none of it follows.
Like piranha, I don't think piranha can rip your throat out. I think like the way a human being could potentially be killed by piranha is hundreds of the fish biting them at the same time until they bleed out and die.
Well, that's the thing, is like it doesn't feel right, because the idea is it's supposed to be like, well, these are super piranhas and they fly and they can bite through steel.
Why do they fly?
Because that's the thing, is that idea is so campy. That
why isn't it in a more campy movie? Like, it should be in a campier movie. It should
be in a campy, goofy movie where it's more like Sharknado or something, where it's like the idea is that this is ridiculous, and then they tried to make it actually scary. I mean, it is kind of annoying, and just whoever was making the decisions didn't really understand. I kept thinking about the recent movie, which is low key like a Lovecraft homage, where they're in like this, it's like a kind of near future sci-fi, and they're in this like deep underwater station, and then
is it with Kristen Stewart? Underwater, I think the name of the movie is.
That's very boring name for a movie, but yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah.
So like I kept thinking about that, because for a huge chunk of the beginning of that movie, you don't know what you're afraid of. You don't know what it is that is hunting them.
Sure.
You don't even really know like that there is something hunting them. It's just scary and creepy. And like the effectiveness of the horror of like knowing that there's something in the black water behind them, but not knowing what it is, incredibly effective. And I feel like if you can't do the special effects right, then like lean more into that kind of horror where it's like,
Yeah,
you know, there's something around here that can get you. You don't know where. Maybe the viewer knows where it is, but the character does. Like this sort of thing works a lot better than these just like, you know, like we've complained several times, these overly busy and just crappy looking special effects.
yeah, it's really interesting because I wonder how much Cameron was involved in this. You know, one of the other things I've read about the movie is the producer, while he got $500,000 to make it, he decided he wanted the movie to cost $300,000.
Okay.
And so, like, one of the battles he and Cameron had were Cameron wanted more money, and he kept saying no. And so, like, at some point, you realize that the filmmakers are just working with what they have, which is basically no money. Like even in 81, 300 grand is it's just not a lot of money for anything, especially in a movie where you're going to have to be paying like diving safety people round the clock for all your underwater like those underwater scenes must have cost, like, I can't believe he stayed in budget. Like that underwater filming is so expensive. But anyway, I think they just didn't have an opportunity to do anything. One of the things I read, and I read this before I watched the movie, and then I was trying to figure out how this could possibly be true. But one of the things I read is that some of the technology Cameron invented for the flying piranhas, he later used in Aliens for the face hugger, the leaping face huggers. And I was like, because I read that before I watched the movie, I was really trying to pay attention to the movie to like see a bit of special effects that I recognized, and I just don't. Like the fish just like what was the technology, Jim? Because the fish just looked like they were hanging from strings and someone was just shaking them, and like I don't know what technology they're referring to there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're being generous with the word technology, and they just mean like we tied a string to the actor and then we tied another string to the piranha, and then when the actor ran, the piranha seemed to be following them, and that was the technology. Mm-hmm. But I mean the face hugger, I mean, okay, to be slightly more generous, pretty sure the face hugger is like stop motion, at least some of the time. So maybe there's some amount of stop motion in this movie, but I don't think there is actually.
It doesn't feel like it. I mean, it feels like a rubber fish that's on a string, and they bump it into stuff. Like no part of the fish actually moves. Maybe the wings flap. I think they do. I think the wings flap is the most we get from movement of the fish. I don't think their mouths move. I don't think any part of them move. I think it is like there. It's so interesting. There are two distinct sound designs in this movie, right? There's the noise the piranhas make when they're in the water, and then there's the noise the piranhas make when they're flying through the air. And I think both of them are bad. I mean, the first one, like I said, the first movie, that piranha noise is like all throughout the first movie. Like that's like half of what the soundtrack is just the piranha. I don't even know how to describe what the noise is. It's just like this.
Yeah.
Like.
Right.
But the flying noise is like, it just, I don't even like, it's supposed to be the flapping, I guess, but it just sounds so inept and unscary. Like it sounds silly. And I think this is the main problem. At one point in the movie, they should have been like, oh, this is bad. We should just lean into it and make it silly.
Right. It's too late though. They already had the script. Yeah. They had to film the script.
Yeah. They already fired their director.
Yeah. It was just doomed. It was just always doomed. Mm-hmm. The sound, you were talking about the sound just now. I mean, the sound was too loud. It was wrong. The music was too loud and bad. just yeah.
There's really nothing. Like, can you think of a good thing to say about this movie? Like, what's a thing that you thought this movie did very well?
Well, I thought that Lance Henriksen did a great job, like with what he was given, and I thought that the scuba instructor protagonist woman was like a good actress. I was like, oh, I've never seen her before. She did great. You know, it's exactly what the role calls for, and So the performances were often pretty good.
Yeah, she will later come back to be in James Cameron's Titanic. She plays woman.
Good for her. Yeah, that's about all I got though in terms of good qualities.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the frustrating thing is I think there are nuggets of interesting stuff here. I actually think the dynamic between Lance Henriksen and Trisha O'Neill like could have been really interesting. I think there is. I mean, obviously they're going hard for some Jaws stuff here, and I actually think Lance Henriksen's character is like made to look like he's coming right out of Jaws. Like he does kind of look like Brody from Jaws a little bit. Like the way they have him dress, like he just kind of does look like him.
I see what you mean. I think that's what they're going for.
Yeah, and so I think there would be interesting things to say about, if you want to attempt to bring an arc into the story, make their son really the pivot point of the film, right? That like these are two people that have split up for some reason. Their son doesn't feel great about it. Obviously, they established that in the opening of the movie that their son doesn't feel great about it. And I know make like why did they split up? We kind of get lip service to that, but like have that be something that you need to overcome. Like have Lance Henriksen's character, he's been fucking up, or he's been too obsessed with his work, or something to give him any kind of anchor or movement towards change around the events that are happening in the town. And there's just none of that there. Yeah. He's just kind of like the characters just kind of go from scene to scene. There's no real interpersonal conflict in the movie.
Yeah. They just are split up with, and you don't even get the sense at the end of the movie that like, oh, they're back together now. It's really just more like, they care about each other.
Yeah.
Enough that obviously they don't want each other to just die, but they're not actually together. Like that was certainly my interpretation is this is not a like, oh, everything's good now. Like, no, that wasn't even.
Did they make out at the end? I don't think they did.
No,
I think they just hugged.
They just hugged because they thought she was dead.
Yeah. The end.
Yeah. And she wasn't dead.
So. No, hooray. She made it out because she grabbed onto the anchor.
Yeah.
Which is, by the way, that's how the first movie ends. The first movie ends with there's a flooded building that has toxic waste in it that they need to release into the river to kill all the piranha. And so someone goes down in the place. He doesn't have scuba gear on. He goes down into the building with a rope tied around him and releases the toxic waste. And then they drive the boat away and yanks him out of there really fast away from the piranha. So like they did the same thing again.
That's hilarious. That's real creative, guys.
Yeah, very creative. This is a bad movie. Like these type of movies I can have a lot of fun with, and I think the first Piranha is that. It's a movie that like it's a Joe Dante movie. We said it leans into the camp a little bit more. I mean, like one of the opening scenes of the first movie is one of the lead characters playing the Jaws arcade game. So like it's a movie that's like winking at you that it knows it's just a Jaws clone, and it's kind of having fun with that. This movie just doesn't have any of that. I really do think it's like camp is the wrong tone for Jim Cameron. He can't do it.
Yeah.
And whether or not that's the fault of everything else in this movie or his fault himself, it just none of it works here.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, he definitely can be funny, but he's not as deft with it that he can like, change comedic styles. He just has his one sort of like dry, cynical humor that appears in the movies that he has that are actually funny. It's
never the so bad it's good type of humor. Never. Yeah. So that is Piranha 2: The Spawning. If you've listened to this entire conversation and have not seen that movie, you can just skip that one.
Yep. Just watch the next James Cameron movie.
Yeah. Which is what, Matt? Do you know off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, I want to say the Terminator.
You are correct. Okay. The next movie after this, 3 years later, James Cameron makes The Terminator, which is again just a fucking insane career move. It's like, yeah, I directed this shitty movie that I got fired from, but my name was still on it. And then 3 years later, I made one of the biggest movies ever.
Yeah. Right. I mean, we're going to talk about it when we get there, but he has he has an eye for what people are gonna like.
Yeah.
Before we move on completely, I'm just like I'm going insane because I was looking up Lance Henriksen as we were talking, and apparently he was the king in the Super Mario Brothers movie, which I've seen that movie so many times, and I swear to God that is not Lance Henriksen, but
not King Koopa.
King, the actual king who got turned into fungus, and then he only gets turned.
Oh.
But I verified this on like 2 different sources, and I'm like, but it's just not like, I'm just going crazy. I'm like, that's not Lance Henriksen, but apparently, according to IMDb, it is. So anyway,
he also plays the Black Knight in the Hearthstone tradable card game that Blizzard made. Did you know that?
That's cool. He's been in, like, I'm looking at he's been in like 100 movies. It's really an incredible career. I was looking this up because I was like, where was he in his career when he made The Spawning? And it's like, well, it's actually his like 10th movie basically. So he's been in a bunch of movies, but I wouldn't say that he's like a recognized face.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder, like, this is the type of movie that I don't think gets made anymore, you know? Like, I just, like, not that I think this movie should have been made, because I don't think it should have been, but like, this is like this late 70s, early 80s kind of very tiny, very rough, very horny horror picture that I just don't think they make anymore.
Yeah. It's what I think of as like a horror B movie, which, where would the market for such a thing be now other than, YouTube?
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah. So that is Piranha 2, The Spawning. I can't wait to talk about Terminator. And I can't wait to compare the Terminator to Piranha 2, The Spawning. Let's see how our boy has changed in these 3 years between these movies.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Doof. Matt, let's move on to our Doof canon vote from last week. Last week we talked about the movie Groundhog Day. We said we loved it. We said it should absolutely be put into the canon of the greatest films of all time. But we left our final decision up to our listeners. And you want to know what they said, Matt?
What'd they say?
With a vote of 95%, our listeners said, yes, Groundhog Day is worthy of entrance into the Doof canon of greatest films of all time. That does mean that 5% of our listeners said no. Unfortunately, they did not tell us why, which is heartbreaking, because I really, that handful of folks, I want to know.
Yeah.
I want to know.
Right. If you're going to be in the 5% and you're not going to tell us why, that just leaves us thinking that maybe you're just out there sowing chaos and just kicking puppies and voting no on Groundhog Day. And
those two actions are equally immoral.
I'm left to assume this if you don't tell me why.
Yeah, you puppy kickers. What's wrong with you? Over here kicking puppies.
Just calling it as I see it.
I think it's funny that this movie, we talked about it last week, which is the same week a video game came out called Deathloop, which is a Groundhog Day-esque video game concept where you are trapped in a time loop and you're trying to kill your way out of it, which is obviously very different from Groundhog Day, but it's just a reminder how just everywhere these kind of Groundhog Day scenarios are.
Yeah, that's and I maybe we're going to talk about this in a second. I'm not actually sure, but one of the first shows we covered on the Doofcast was in fact Edge of Tomorrow, which we talked about plenty last week as well. But it's just like like we're just, so many of my favorite things are actually this concept. So
one of our listeners did say that like any movie that has the time loop concept, like automatically like it's starting from a positive place with them, like that they just love the concept. And I think that's kind of where I am too, that I think it's such a fun, creative concept that allows you to do so many different things. I mean, my favorite thing about it, we didn't really touch on this last week, is that it's like you can take it in any direction. Like you have Happy Death Day, which is a horror comedy. You have Edge of Tomorrow, which is an action film. You have the Deathloop, which is a video game. You have Groundhog Day. Like you have Spring Breakers. Like it is a concept that can mix genre and work in different things and explore different things and say different things. Like those movies are using the same concept, but they're saying different things in those same concepts. It's not always the same conceit. And I just think that's wonderful. And it's like they invented a whole new genre when they made this movie.
Yeah, that's cool. The Deathloop game just looks fascinating based on the trailers that I've seen.
I really want to play it. I just can't justify spending money right now. Stupid money.
Yeah.
Why don't I have infinite money?
Yeah, I know. My PS4 went kaput, so I no longer have any device with which to play DVDs now, listeners.
Oh, I didn't know that was your primary Blu-ray device.
It's literally the only device that I have that's capable of playing any CD-shaped object.
Oh, interesting. See,
Yeah.
I have a 4K disc player because I'm classy.
Yeah.
Well, you need to get a new PlayStation, obviously.
I do, at some
especially
point.
to play Deathloop.
I'm pretty disappointed, though, because the PS4 did not last. Maybe it lasted 2 years. That is not a reasonable lifetime for a piece of hardware like that. Yeah. I've owned a lot of consoles in my life. I think the only other console that ever failed before it became redundant was the Xbox.
Yeah, that's weird. I mean, I've had my
360.
PS4. I've had my PS4 since release, and it's still going strong.
Yeah.
So
something wrong with the hard drive. The hard drive's just dead.
Just got bad luck, man.
I guess so.
Bad luck.
Guess so.
All right. So welcome Groundhog Day to the canon. And Matt, I thought as we conclude this episode, what we could do now is we could look back at what movies have been entered into the canon, because I did it, Matt. I finally did it. I wrote down every single movie that is on our list. You know, this list we've been making, I never actually made the list. Well, the list exists now.
Holy shit.
Here. I know. It only took 19 episodes, so that's one a month. So 19 months it took to do this. So over a year and a half, almost a year and a half.
Someone please make a supercut of all the times Scott
over a year and
promised to make this list.
Well, I made it. I still haven't formalized it and put it on the website, but this is the important first step.
Okay.
But I thought it'd be fun. You know, there's 14 movies on this list now, and I thought it'd be fun to look back at those movies and be like, are we still glad these are on? Because the interesting thing about this list, Matt, is we have nothing to say about it, right? Like, the movies are nominated by our council, the movies are picked by our patrons, and the movies are voted on by our listeners. And so your and I's opinion on this is only just in the ether. It is not actually the one deciding any of this stuff. So it's a list that we completely don't have any control over. And I want to check to see how we feel about it.
Yeah, it's just us talking. So yeah, let's see.
Yeah. All right. So here is the Doof canon list as it stands right now, the 21st of September, 2021. First, we have our very first movie, Primer. Then Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Mad Max Fury Road, Stardust, Akira, Bahubali, The Princess Bride, Starship Troopers, The Prestige, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, In Bruges, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and lastly, our newest entry, Groundhog Day. So, Matt, what was as I read that list, what were you thinking?
I was thinking, wow, what a delightfully eclectic list of unlike things, which is exactly what I want it to be. We've said this a million times, I don't just want it to be like the movies pulled from the list of the greatest films ever. I want to have some oddballs on there. And obviously these are all films that are well regarded, but it's very cool to have something like Bahubali on there, which is, I never would have heard of if somebody hadn't put it up for candidacy. And even something like Primer, which is a well-known movie, but it's it's at the same time, it's not regarded as a super great film, but I think it's the kind of film that I'd like more people to see, and thus I'm glad that it's on the list. So I think it's serving its function. So I'm very happy with it. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm overall pretty happy with it. There's a few on this list that I'm if I were making my own personal list, I don't think they would be on there. I think famously, The Prestige is one of those where Michael and I butted heads on that movie for 45 minutes on that episode. I don't think it's a bad movie. I it wouldn't be on my list. I think one of the most interesting ones to me is the movie Stardust, which is a movie I enjoyed, but I don't think I've ever seen it on any kind of these lists. And it was, I think, out of all of our votes, it was the absolute closest one. I think 53 to 47% yes on this one. So it was a very, very close vote. Most of these, I think, are in the 90s. Like most of our Canon movies are overwhelmingly accepted,
Yeah.
but not Stardust. And I don't know how I feel about that movie. It's been probably a year since we watched it and talked about it, and I liked it, and I think I ended up saying yes at the time. I just don't know how I feel about that movie. That movie's kind of faded from my memory very distinctly.
I think I probably pitched that movie a bit harder than you did, because my recollection of that movie is that, like, I first saw it and I think I had very low expectations, and then it really surprised me with, it's a Neil Gaiman story, it's competently directed, it's got a lot of really what I think are great, really fun scenes, like the whole ending action set piece with the witches and using the one prince's body like a voodoo doll puppet. It's just like this super like great dark fantasy stuff that I feel starved for. I feel like there's just no like kind of ugly dark fantasy like that anymore. Or there hadn't been for a long time before that movie came out anyway. And so it filled a certain appetite of mine. But I also can totally admit that it drags in places. It's got some kind of plot zigs and zags that don't go anywhere and don't make sense. Like it's not like a perfect clock like The Princess Bride or something. It's like 70% of the way to being a Princess Bride, which is, good, but not that good. So
I think it gets graded on such a curve for the exact reason you just mentioned, is that most of the movies that are like this movie are really, really bad. Like most of them. So just the fact that it was competent, like, gives it bonus points. And I don't think it's a bad movie. I enjoyed it. I don't know. I look at that. I look at this and I'm like, yeah, strong movie, great movie, great movie, great movie. And then I'm like, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I think I'm with you that Bahubali is one that like I'm most excited to see on here, because it's such a wonderful movie in the vein of a type of movie that I just don't watch normally. And it's so fun that I watched it and loved it. And so many of our listeners watched it and loved it enough to put it in. Like that makes me happy. Like that's the type of thing I want our show to be sometimes. Sometimes we're going to talk about James Cameron and we're going to talk about Aliens, a movie that literally everyone listening has probably seen a dozen times. But sometimes we're going to talk about random obscure shit that no one's ever heard of, or more fair with Bahubali, half the world has heard of, but not the half we live in, that we can introduce to people.
Yeah, I agree. I like that. You said it better than I could. That's the one movie on the list where I'm like, I expect people to be scrolling through the list and be like, yeah, I've seen that. What is this? And maybe they check it out and get to enjoy something that they just never ever would have seen otherwise.
Yeah. We have 2 animated features on this list: Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and Akira. So we have 1 anime, Akira, and I'm happy with that being the anime representative on our list. We don't need any more. That's it. We got our 1, and then we're 1 and done with the animes.
Yeah,
I do think Primer is another one where I think I'm with you. Where like I liked that movie, but I also look at it on this list and I'm like,
yeah, it qualifies for me because it's like a movie that maybe people haven't heard of that I still think is worth watching. And I mean, I don't know, everybody has the experience of like having new friends or whatever, and you're like, have you seen this, have you seen that? Oh, you haven't seen this? Oh, I got to show you this. And Primer might be one of those movies for me where it's like it's relatively little known, and for the right type of person, like someone who likes sort of harder sci-fi and time travel plots, they're just going to love it, right? For not the right kind of person, they're going to be like, I was confused, I don't care, I was bored, right? But I think maybe it appeals to me, and it appeals to people like me, and maybe that's why it gets kind of upgraded for me.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think I came out of that conversation really in love with that movie, and I think it's because it's such a fun movie to talk about. Which I don't mean as an insult to the movie. I think it's a good movie, and I had such a good time talking about it that it made me like the movie more. And that's the type of thing that fades in time because you kind of forget what the act of talking about that movie was. So when I think about that movie, I'm remembering the movie and not the great conversation you and I had about the movie.
Yeah.
But I think that's why we ended up voting yes, is because it's such a fun movie to pick apart. And I want more movies like Primer to be made.
Yeah.
Like I do. I want more people to make movies like that movie.
Right. That was the thing that I most remember about that conversation was just how exciting the thought was that they made this movie for like $10,000, and it doesn't look it. Like it looks really good. Like I think it's very well directed, given not just like given the budget, but like no, it looks really nice. There's a lot of thought put into every shot. It's a well shot movie. If you're going to complain about it, it's going to be something more along the lines of like pacing or something like that. So like that to me is inspiring.
Sure.
Which is totally really kind of outside of and separate from the film itself, but is the sort of fact about the film that makes me excited.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. So looking at this list, is there a type of movie, a genre of movie, a flavor of movie that you think we have like failed to capture in these 14 films that you hope is going to appear in the future?
Is there any horror on there?
No. No.
Okay. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. How about you?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that. I think there's a lot of wonderful horror films that I really love that we just haven't been. I don't think our audience is. We don't talk about horror very much, so I don't think we've cultivated an audience that like loves horror. And that's why I think we just haven't seen those films nominated. I like that idea. I think I want to see some of the like. I want to see some really like we've got like movies like Primer, but I want to see some like really obscure indie movies. Like, you know what I want to see? I want to see some 70s shit on here. I want to see some like not very well known but really fascinating movies from like the 70s and 80s and 90s.
Yeah, sure. Is The Bicycle Thief, was that something that somebody just wanted us to watch, or was that on this?
That was a patron selection. That was not a like Canon.
Because that's a movie where you just mentioned 70s movies. I'm like, that's a movie that I love. Like, not even like I loved for an old movie. Like, no, that was just a great movie. And I bet there's a lot of stuff from 60s, 70s, etc. that's like excellent, and we just don't know about because why would we, right? Yeah.
I mean that might be a bad example because that's like one of the highest regarded films of all time.
It's true, but I hadn't like heard of it, and I think most people haven't. So I take your point, but at the same time, like signal boosting these things in a list of like great movies that you should take time out of your day to see, I think is a worthy cause.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole podcast called Unspooled that kind of did this with the AFI Top 100, right? Where they looked at every single movie on that list, and the question they were asking themselves was like, does that actually deserve to be on a list of the greatest movies of all time or not? And that I think that's a fun exercise. I don't want us to dive into that specifically, but I think there are truly great works that do not appear on any other lists that no one's ever heard about. I mean, the problem, the inherent flaw in the way we do this list is that movies that no one's ever heard of are never going to appear because no one's ever heard of them. Right. So no one's going to nominate them. If someone nominates them, no one's going to vote on them. That is the flaw in the design of what we've done here. But yeah. I'm okay with I think a populist list is sometimes looked down on for reasons that I think are stupid. So I'm okay with like some of the most well-regarded movies of the last 20 years being on our list.
Yeah.
Like I'm so happy that Starship Troopers is on the list, that Eternal Sunshine is on the list, because
Right.
these are movies that like they're mostly well regarded and well thought of, but they're like a snooty AFI list would never include, right? Like
Mhm.
Starship Troopers is never going to be on the AFI list of 100 greatest films of all time, ever.
Yeah.
And it's a spectacular movie that
Yeah.
is doing so many wonderful things.
Yeah. Right. Like I said, it's the movies where if I have a friend and I'm like, oh, have you seen this? Have you seen this? And you go down that mental list of things where you're like, well, if you haven't seen this, we're gonna watch this. And a lot of those movies are not like the greatest pieces of art of all time.
Mhm.
It's like, no, this is just it's a fun movie. It's going to be
Yeah.
fun for us to talk about afterward. You're going to be glad you watched it.
And I want to be clear here, like those movies that are the greatest pieces of art, I often love those
Sure.
movies. I love them so much. And there's nothing wrong with that, but there's nothing wrong with also just wanting to watch Starship Troopers or Who Framed Roger Rabbit or
Right.
Star Trek 2, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. This is a complete non sequitur, but my wife has been doing our Doof Media Instagram every week, and on every weekend she posts a story that's like one of the prompts where you can answer a question, and she says, what have you been watching this weekend? And someone said The Nightmare Before Christmas. And when people send stuff in, not everyone, but some of the people that send stuff in, she like will add a story to that and comment on it. And her comment on Nightmare Before Christmas was, never seen this one. And I was just like, what? What? You've never seen The Nightmare Before Christmas?
Oh
It's
my
like-
God.
It's so, I mean, this is kind of what being in a relationship is sometimes, where you're just like, you think you know someone,
Uh-huh.
and then you learn that they've never seen The Nightmare Before Christmas. But I mean, like, her and I have that happen all the time, like between us, like where I'll say I've never seen something and she'll be shocked, and vice versa. It's fun. I mean, that's part
Yeah.
of what our whole Vow to View podcast idea was in the beginning.
Yeah, that's great. That's so funny. It's mind blowing because I've seen that movie like maybe 50 times literally.
Yeah.
And that's great.
That'd be a good one for this list.
Yeah, it would. It's it is one of those ones where it's like everyone knows it's great, but do they really understand how great?
I really want to do a Tim Burton deconstructing one day. We've talked about this before, but man, that dude is really interesting
Yeah.
in that he was so good and is now so bad.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that makes it hard to commit to doing all of his movies, because there's so many of them where I'm just like, why?
Yeah.
Why'd
Yeah,
you
what
do this?
happened? Tim, what happened to you?
Yeah.
Maybe we're wrong. I mean, that's the cool thing, is maybe we're wrong, and he's actually brilliant. And Big Eyes was actually a really good movie.
I mean, I think if you like commit to giving things a chance, you're generally going to find something worth liking about them. But I have watched like all of his movies basically, and there's so many. Like Dark Shadows is just boring.
Yeah,
You know?
it's boring.
Like it's not even that it's like, oh, it's too wacky like the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It's like, no, it's just a boring movie. It's not,
That was a really boring movie.
Yeah.
I hated his Alice in Wonderland. But this is the thing with we're on a total tangent now, but this is the thing with Tim Burton. Like, he'll make Big Fish, which is a movie I loved to death. Loved that movie.
Uh-huh.
And then he'll make Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And you're just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And then he'll make Sweeney Todd, again, a movie I really loved, and he'll make Alice in Wonderland. And I'm like, what happened?
Yeah.
These movies aren't that far apart. What are you doing?
I
Are you
know.
just like taking the day off on some of these movies? You're like, like Frankenweenie. Did you ever see that movie? Oh, I love
No.
that movie.
Well, maybe I did. Yeah, I'm not sure.
It's stop motion animation, which like is my like, I will love everything that's done in stop motion. So maybe that's why I love the movie. Maybe it's not actually a good movie. I don't know. I don't know, man.
Yeah, I don't know. It's he's the platypus of directors, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what that means.
The platypus of directors. Please explain.
I'll just leave that as an exercise to the listener.
All right. Before we wrap everything up, I thought it would be fun to look at. So these are the 14 movies that are on our list. We do have 5 films that did not make it, that did not make the cut. I think it's interesting that overwhelmingly people tend to vote yes, but not always. Would you be interested in hearing what those 5 movies are?
I sure would.
So the first one is technically not a movie. This was before we changed the rules and decided it was going to be movies only, but it was the Castlevania Netflix show, the first season, which no offense to anyone that enjoys this, but I think is the worst thing I've ever had to do a podcast episode on.
Yeah, it's close for me. It's close. There might be a couple that compete with it, but
let me just say I would watch Piranha 2: The Spawning 100 times before I'd watch that season of Castlevania again. The next was Redline, which is I think the only one I was like really disappointed to see lose, because I liked an anime and I just like, it felt like, wow, I liked an anime.
Yeah.
And it didn't quite make it.
I would watch that movie again. Yeah, that's a great movie. That's I agree with you that it would have been cool to have that one on the list, but this is also one of the ones where I can see the counter argument where it's like it's just kind of weird. It's kind of not a real movie. It's kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
I mean, the actual story behind it is that it's like a whole concept for a TV show that they just crammed into a movie.
Yeah,
because they ended up not being able to make the TV show, which to me is kind of delightful, but I can see the argument.
Yeah, I mean, because my biggest problem with anime is so often the pacing of their TV shows. So that fixed it. That fixed it right up. The next one is Dark City, a movie that we both really wanted to love, but just really felt was lacking.
Yeah, there's the unfortunate wrinkle there that we both watched the original cut, and apparently the director's cut just like totally saves it or something. And I just have to be like, first of all, did it really? And second of all,
no, I watched it. Remember the week after I watched the director's cut, and it doesn't. Okay. I mean, it's certainly like considerably better than the other cut, but it doesn't suddenly make it the most brilliant movie I've ever watched or anything.
Yeah, there's this thing where people want to be like, actually, The Matrix ripped this off, and then I'm like, fuck you. The Matrix is not even the same sentence as this movie. Come on.
This whole director's cut thing is actually going to become kind of a pain when it comes to James Cameron, because I think every movie from now on there is a Jim Cameron director's cut of, and like, which are we gonna watch is gonna be an issue. I
think I've seen like all the director's cuts maybe, and
I think I have too,
and I think I like all of the theatrical cuts better. I'll just put that out there.
I think I like most of. I mean, like, we'll talk about Aliens when we get to it, but there's stuff in that director's cut that I absolutely love, and there's stuff in that director's cut that I absolutely hate.
Yes.
And I don't understand why you include it in the movie.
I agree.
So,
yes.
So I think we'll kind of play that by ear. I don't know.
Yeah.
The other one was The Hunt, a movie that we both found absolutely delightful, but can completely understand why it didn't quite make the list.
Yeah, it's a very, very fun movie, but probably not one of the greatest movies of all time.
Yeah, and then last month's Bedazzled was the 5th one. Another one of those that, like, enjoyed my time with it, thought it was very funny, but not the best movie for anyone involved in it at all. So makes sense why it didn't quite make the cut.
Yeah, I think we agreed with that one.
Yeah, so that's it. 19 films, 14 on the list, 5 not. It's a pretty good record so far.
Yeah, I'd say that's a good ratio. I mean, I think it would be, if it were 10 not on the list or whatever, then I'd feel like we were being too hard maybe, and I'd hate to have lost any of these movies. So yeah, it's good. It's a good ratio.
I think the other thing I'd like to see more on this list is some more straight up comedies. I mean, Groundhog Day I think is like the first straight up comedy on the list. And it's really not even a straight up comedy either. Like, it is, but it's not. I don't know. Yeah.
No, I know what you mean. It's not. It's got more heart than you. I think one comment that I made last week was like, this could have just not been a comedy. It's like having Bill Murray be the protagonist almost forces it to be a comedy. Yeah. So you can imagine a totally straight version of this movie.
Like, what is the greatest comedy movie you've seen in the past 20 years? That might be a difficult question, but
I'm going to cheat and just answer a different question like a good politician, which is the most fun I ever had in the movie theater was Team America.
World Police, yeah.
Team America, World Police. That was unambiguously the most fun I ever had in the movie theater.
Yeah. I think like there are some mid 2000s comedies that like I was like right in the place I needed to be when it came out to find it. Like my experience watching Knocked Up in the theater, like was just, I don't think I've ever laughed as much in a movie. Also Superbad. I legitimately don't think I've ever laughed as much in a theater as I did during Superbad. Like that movie came out in 2007. We were like 22 years old. We were the exact target audience of what that movie was going for. And it was hilarious.
Right.
It was just so funny. I think that I watched it again recently because I think another podcast I was listening to was talking about it. It holds up, man. It's really funny. It's a really funny movie.
Yeah, I'm sure I'd like to watch it again. I agree on both of those, and I would add 40-Year-Old Virgin to my list of movies that came out roughly in that epoch.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing how many of these movies have aged very poorly. I think 40-Year-Old Virgin is a movie that aged worse than Superbad did, but Superbad still aged pretty poorly. But I still find them just very, very funny. Very funny.
Absolutely.
I think my favorite, like, straight up comedy from the past 20 years, though, is Forgetting Sarah Marshall. I don't know if you ever saw that movie.
I love that movie. Yeah, that's absolutely on the list.
So good. So if anyone wants to nominate Forgetting Sarah Marshall, I would be there for that.
Yeah, that would be fun to talk about.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's it. So 14 movies down. Surprise, we're setting a cap of 15 movies, so we've only got one more to put. No, I'm just kidding. This list is going to be as long as we want it to.
Yeah, that's
infinitely long.
Yeah, we'll never stop.
That's fun. Yeah,
can't stop us.
We'll see what the council brings to us next month.
All right,
but for now, that's all we got for you guys. If you have any opinions on James Cameron, on Piranha 2: The Spawning, or on our Canon list, you can reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com, or on Twitter or Instagram at doofmedia, or at our subreddit r/doofmedia.
Yeah, and if you're not already subscribed to the Doofcast, we encourage you to subscribe and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
And if you like what we do here and want to support this show and all the shows we do on the Doof Network, you can become a patron of Doof Media. Head on over to patreon.com/Doof Media, and you can subscribe at any of the available levels. You get a whole bunch of cool bonus stuff, including bonus episodes, voting on things like the Council of Doof, and getting to be the people that nominate those films. So head on over to patreon.com/Doof Media and check us out.
That's right. Also, please consider rating and reviewing the Doofcast on Apple Podcasts, because every review on that website or app or what have you really does help us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
Yeah, we need people to see us talk about James Cameron's Piranha 2: The Spawning, and we can't do that unless you all go to Apple Podcasts and click those 5 stars and say, it's great.
He's
the
right.
fish fly.
The fish fly.
The fish fly.
And they make that sound. It's great.
I just really feel like if I was in this movie, I would have just hit the fish with a baseball bat and won.
Well, remember when the guy tries to and they still kill him?
Yeah.
And it's
sad.
really
disappointing.
And everybody's watching, and it's just like this really anticlimactic and sad sequence.
But I really feel like he just didn't try hard enough, is my point there.
Yeah, I think he had sort of lost the will to live.
I mean, was he the one whose son died?
Yeah, he was the one whose son died.
Yeah. I just feel like, I don't know. I just feel like they're very slow moving fish.
Yeah.
That
right.
Just hit it with a bat.
Big heavy target, not very maneuverable. Just hit it. Yeah.
Oh no, it's biting me on the arm. I'm just gonna
good.
Pick it up.
Now it's still, and I can just crush it.
I'm just gonna pick it up and throw it on the ground and step on it.
Yeah.
Oh no, piranhas. All right, folks, that is it for us this week. We'll see you next week as we continue our Deconstructing Cameron series with his second film, Matt's favorite movie of 1984, probably, The Terminator.
Bye-bye.
We'll see you next week.
My name
name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.